podcasts are bigger than they've ever been right now. And I don't know what made them explode.
Why is video important?
People have been saying it's been important for 20 years.
So why is video important on LinkedIn is kind of specifically what we've been talking about fairly recently, isn't it? We started the Eyeweb Unplugged podcast in around June or July last year.
Yeah.
We've had a few episodes of that. I think we have to hold our hands up and say it's been a bit sporadic, and when things get busy, it's difficult as an agency to find time for internal promotion, I guess.
I've had to protect your time a little bit, haven't
I? So we've done a few of these podcasts now, and they've got us some coverage. But there's a lot of talk at the moment about how valuable video is on LinkedIn, specifically. I
will say, do you not think... So, I mean, everyone's already laboured this point about, podcasts are getting bigger and they're blowing up. But genuinely, podcasts are bigger than they've ever been right now. And I don't know what made them explode. Because recently, within the last 5 years in particular... You know what I mean? Like Joe Rogan podcast being a household name, like being the big podcast. The Diary of a CEO being the next biggest hot thing right now. Do you know what I mean? Like there's I don't recall prior to the last 5 years, there just always being like a podcast that everyone was either watching or even if you haven't been watching it or listening to it, there's at least people talking about it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Do you listen to podcasts?
I listen to a few podcasts sporadically, depending on how into them I am. But yeah, commuting will be generally when I do.
Because I don't really. I've listened to a couple. Some friends of mine started a podcast a while ago, which was about musical theatre. So that's obviously a big thing for me. And I listened to it because they were friends of mine and I wanted to support them. And then another friend of mine does a podcast around the scare industry, which again is a big interest of mine. But again, I don't listen to that very often. I have recently started getting into a podcast called Uncanny. Have you heard of that?
No.
There's now a spin-off TV series on BBC Three, I think, and it's a podcast about the paranormal. So again, I think with podcasts, for me, I think it's about finding that podcast that resonates with you. I prefer video.
Yeah, you just can't watch video whilst driving.
It's not recommended.
But no, because
it's frowned upon.
No,
or illegal.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can, but you shouldn't.
I've seen it. I've seen people watching TikTok in traffic.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
Yeah, people have got some questionable morals.
Yes.
But no, for me, I would say definitely, I've listened to a mixture of comedy podcasts, true crime. It's only recently now that I've kind of been leadership level within a business, I've started listening to more like businessy podcasts to a level.
Yeah, you're probably showing me up there.
I don't listen to lots. I don't listen to lots.
I listen to them for pure entertainment.
Yeah.
I've listened to the Help I Sexted My Boss podcast as well. And I think...
That's good. And I think the original big podcast for a while, back in 10 years ago, was My Dad Made a Porno. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
I've heard of it. I've never actually listened to it. I mean,
it's not even that outrageous or good, but...
But that blew up, didn't it? It
Yeah.
became they did a tour and all of that sort of thing. So maybe Eyeweb Unplugged's going to go on tour. What do you reckon? Doubt.
No.
But obviously, I mean, leading on from that, and obviously I've mentioned TikTok. I think there's a couple of sides of this, isn't there? There's long form content in podcasts, and then short form. Now, we've talked about TikTok a lot. Maybe not actually on our podcast, but obviously TikTok. I mean, the rise of TikTok has been absolutely incredible. I don't actually know the figures because I probably would have looked it up if I thought we were going to enter into a conversation about TikTok. But obviously that kind of blew up in COVID, really, didn't it?
Yeah, massively.
I mean, I think it was a thing before. I mean, it was big in China before then, but particularly in the UK and the US, I would argue, it was sort of lockdown that people were just stuck in their houses. But it has, I think, I don't know if you agree, but I think it has reduced people's attention spans.
I was going to say the rise of TikTok has correlated with the decrease of the attention span completely identically. Yeah.
We could plot it like that, couldn't we? But I think, I mean, what we've tended to do, and I think a lot of people are doing, is we filmed our podcast as a long form thing and then used it as short form on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But again, what we're also now seeing is that people are engaging with individuals on LinkedIn rather than businesses. So individuals are being encouraged to get in front of the camera. And I think personally, I do see a benefit in that, because I think it's all well and good typing something on LinkedIn, but I think it's a lot easier to engage people with visuals. Mm-hmm. I mean, I talk about it all the time in social media anyway, don't I, with our clients, that I talk to our clients about making sure that they've got a variable amount of content, because people consume content differently, and not everybody wants to read a blog. Not everybody actually wants to watch a video, and sometimes people just want to look at a static image. But this, I think, with LinkedIn and the sort of messages that we're getting through LinkedIn, it's a lot more engaging through a video, and you get to actually see that person talking and getting an idea of who that person is, which particularly for an agency, I think is really important for us as brand image.
No, definitely. And I think what's helped with the rise in LinkedIn is, yes, video content moving to the front of the platform. I think people maybe more use LinkedIn as a virtual networking platform now, as opposed to what it used to be 10 years ago, which was basically just an online CV where you would get either, recruitment messages all day or whatever. One of my primary uses of LinkedIn now is as a news source for my industry, being able to see other marketing professionals sharing case studies, things that they've done that's performed well, sharing news about what's going on with various, whatever it's, social algorithms, SEO algorithms, all that kind of stuff. Being able to see that as a real world example of the stuff we're doing is a great source of information, learning,
And seeing somebody talk about that, I think, is a more trustworthy medium.
Yeah. Apart from it's just wrapped up in a corporate blob. it's a bit. Do you know what I mean? You have to muddy through the disingenuousness a little bit.
Absolutely, but I think there's less place to hide in a video.
Yes, and that's why people like it, I think.
Unless you are Steven Spielberg and you're incredibly good at video editing, which obviously I really am. Sort of. I mean, I've seen a statistic, if I can say that, where people are 20 times more likely to share video content on LinkedIn, and that by posting video content on LinkedIn is likely to increase your visibility by 52%. Now, I think with any statistic, you can read that how you want, and statistics can be manipulated because, you know, there are so many other things that fall into play with that. You have to look at consistency and regularity of posting. Now, I will say that for video content, how often can you realistically post? Because as we've discovered, there's a lot of work that goes into creating a video and editing a video.
Yeah.
However, I've seen benefits from that.
I suppose the other big thing to really think about is because the barrier to entry is much higher than being able to just smash an image on and sharing a quick little thought bubble, whatever, think bit, Fitbit, that's not the right bit.
No.
But naturally, because you've got to put more effort in, think about what you're saying on a video. The people producing video are going to be better a lot of the time than just, you know, everyone who can just chuck whatever they want on a general status.
Absolutely. And I think, to be honest, I think there's also an argument here about the level of polish on videos. Now, I probably fall in the middle on this, which won't come as any surprise to you whatsoever, because, you know, I tend to fall in the middle on a lot of things. When something is highly polished, it depends what you're aiming for. But if you're looking at like a show reel, for example, you probably want that to be...
personal branding,
No, but at the same time, I'm not a huge fan of the completely opposite end of that spectrum, where it's completely unedited, really out of focus.
It's me walking down a windy road.
Yeah, absolutely. But there are people. There is a trend for that now. For me, that just looks sloppy and lazy. Sorry for anyone who is producing that sort of content, but it's not for me, and that doesn't instill professionalism or trust for me. And that's my hot take. But I think there certainly is a place for producing video content. I mean, we try and think about where we're posting our content and whether it's going on our personal LinkedIn feeds or whether it's going on our company page. And I think there is a thought process behind that. But like we were saying, we saw that it was something that we felt that we wanted to explore more.
Yeah.
And we've tried to find the time outside of client work to spend some time on a bit of personal content for LinkedIn. And it was you that actually introduced me to, virtually, to Mark Gaisford when he was running his agency Red Sprout. And I remember you saying to me you'd seen one of their videos on LinkedIn and you were like, I really like this.
It's one of the rare videos that I didn't hate. So that sounds negative, but no.
And one of the rare videos that you were able to show me in the office.
Yeah, no. Those are my personal videos.
But what we were interested in at the time, and if I remember right, the main reason you showed me that was we were trying to find our tone of voice as an organisation, weren't we?
Yeah.
And we really enjoyed his content. There was a level of humour there, whilst retaining professionalism,
yeah.
and also being insightful and having a message there.
Yeah, because I think I knew I wanted to get us into video, but every time I would load up the LinkedIn feed, and I follow like a decent number of people, and I've curated my feed over time. I don't just like follow any old rubbish.
Follow for follow.
No. You know, if somebody starts posting content I don't like, I very quickly be like, no, get buy from the feed, whatever. So I like to think most of my LinkedIn feed is pretty good quality stuff, but still, even with that and putting time into it, a lot of the video that I would watch, I'd just be like, it's not me. It might be a little bit cringe, or it might be a bit overly corporate. You know, I couldn't find that kind of like sweet spot where I'd watch something, I'd be like, do you know what, that's got my attention. They've got something to say that I'm engaging with. They're being personable, but at the same time, not too casual to the point where it doesn't feel like it's writing professional setting, because I think I'm still not old school, but I still am in that kind of like, I think in the corporate world, I think we have that version of ourselves as just a little bit more safe, a little bit more polished that we present outwardly, and I kind of like still like to keep that difference a little bit.
Yeah,
So
I think I agree. I think there needs to be an element of this is work, Mark.
yeah,
You
but
know,
it still then needs to be, no, this is still real
absolutely,
Mark. So.
because you don't want, if you are putting on a mask, people will quite quickly see that it's a curated version of yourself. I think. Would you agree with that as a
yeah, I
statement?
think there's just a little bit of a filter. We've just
Just
took a
a
little bit off the
bit
top.
of a
Just
filter.
took a little bit off the top.
Yeah, okay.
It's like that's social media though, isn't it? Right? Load up anybody's
that's
Instagram
true.
feed. Maybe not their B-reels, but just you get the point now. Social that's social media.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, do I want to be showing pictures of me on a night out to my clients?
Yeah. No.
I mean, maybe at the beginning of the night, but definitely not the end of the night. Yes, I do have a social life, but you don't need to see me lying on the sofa suffering the following morning.
No.
But we did really resonate with Mark Gaisford's content, didn't we?
Yeah, it's cool stuff.
And then recently he's had to close his agency for personal reasons, but I think it was you that mentioned that he was doing this course about how to produce videos for LinkedIn in 2025, because we were seeing much more of an engagement in videos on that, and for all the reasons that we've just discussed. So I undertook that, and it was like 50 quid, and I found it really insightful. But it wasn't just about teaching me how to do stuff. It was helping me understand what process he was going through to do that, because a lot of the stuff that I do is self-taught. And I think that's a great way to learn personally, because if you're self-teaching, you have a passion to learn that. And it was a really interesting process to see how he goes through his ideation, his scripting, editing, and stuff like that. And it kind of gave me a excitement about trying to do something. And also it broke down a bit of a barrier for me, because I'm now getting much more proficient with using Premiere Pro, which is an Adobe program that I had been terrified of using. I'd used Adobe Rush, and I'd used some video editing in Canva, which is very limiting. And we were using CapCut as well, which, to be fair, CapCut is brilliant.
Even I've used CapCut, and so I do nothing to do with video.
Have you used it on desktop?
Yeah.
And it's not a huge amount different from Premiere Pro. And if you are wanting to get into video editing, I would say it's a really good place to start. But as we've gone through our previous episodes of the podcast, I was starting to find it quite limiting and quite slow, whereas Premiere Pro gives me a lot more control, and a lot more, it's a lot quicker. So that was really interesting for me. And then I did my first video off the back of that, and it did really well for me. I mean, I've already gained some more followers. I mean, the impression rate on that video was a lot higher than my average impression rate. I will say, and I think this is a really important thing to point out, because LinkedIn growth isn't necessarily a steady incline, and you might post one piece of content and then the next, and that does really well, and then the next piece doesn't quite so much. The next video I did wasn't quite as successful from an impression rate, but I still got a great level of interaction on it.
It's definitely more memorable as well, though, right?
And I think
Yeah.
the feedback that I've got
Yeah.
is that people can really see my personality
I think
coming
even
through.
a couple of clients have even who don't deal with you, they've even mentioned to me at various points, they're like, oh yeah, we saw your Eyeweb stuff, saw Mark, whatever. That's the difference in scrolling past a piece of content that's even a photo of you and a thought versus a piece of content that they're watching, which is video and engaging with. You stand out, but the time required to do it is so faffy.
I mean, I think I'm starting...
That's what blew my mind this week.
So obviously you've now stepped in front of the camera.
Yeah.
I mean, well, you've done these before, but this
yeah.
is different because, and I think, I mean, the interesting thing about having done these podcasts is that, I mean, I've been in front of the camera before, and I've performed in front of people as part of a theatre company.
Mm-hmm.
So doing this sort of thing doesn't faze me so much. And I know that a lot of people were a bit like, oh, we're doing video stuff, okay. But this is really different. This is just us sitting down and having a chat. Whereas doing stuff to camera
feels very unnatural for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a newish experience for you.
Yeah, I think the difference is when it's just me in front of a camera, I'm far more self-aware and in my own head. So I'm trying to then almost like watch myself in third person to see if what I'm doing is coming across. It's just an impossible task to do all of that. You know, when you're sat here in a podcast, it's just a conversation. You're not thinking about it too much. Obviously, I've done stuff in front of crowds before. Obviously, I was at the uni a few weeks ago doing the student chats, and then in my personal stuff anyway, because I do like the DJ and stuff. I've performed to crowds and stuff. So it's not the same as speaking, but it's still being in a room, almost like not fully the centre of attention, but
being
attention is on
point.
you. Yeah. So there's always you have to kind of get away from that a bit, but yeah, it definitely took me like 20 minutes to like start getting into a rhythm.
And you do, don't you?
Yeah.
I think you did.
I know I did. I was much happier when I'd nail something in one take rather than 10.
But you know, even the professionals take more than one take.
Can't rush perfection.
Can you find it though?
No. But what I will say, which I think is an absolute like revelation, is because quite a few people talk about this on TikTok as well, using fast cuts and scenery changes to keep things interesting, even if what you're saying is moderately boring, moderately interesting.
Boring.
If there's interesting stuff going on behind you, just naturally we will pay attention, which I just think is annoying because it takes so much time to go and change scenery and record, you know, rather than just sitting down and recording a video which would take 2 minutes, you're now recording a quarter of the lines here, a quarter of the lines outside, a quarter of the lines in the bathroom, a quarter of your lines walking.
I think I took those out in the edit.
Yeah, but you know, and I think what's interesting is as a viewer, you don't even register really that all of that effort's gone into it.
No,
it's taken for granted completely. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think it probably depends on your experience, because you know we would look at it and go, wow, they've put a lot of work into that. But yeah, ordinarily, you know, your average Joe Blogs is probably just, well, they're just consuming the content.
Yeah, they're not paying attention to, you know.
But I think, you know, I think it's been valuable for me in a number of ways. Like I say, it's given me an insight into actually how valuable it is, because it's all well and good somebody saying you should be doing this, but then actually experiencing the returns on it is another. And then, as I say, you know, having that opportunity to learn some new skills in video editing has been beneficial for me and my personal growth. And then, you know, you've then had an insight into, you know, scripting stuff, editing it. You know, I mean, you know, you do write stuff, but I think you found it quite interesting in, right, well, I've actually written down what I want to say, but then realising that writing something down and saying it are two different things.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm a lot more of an off-the-cuff person generally.
Same.
So to try and sit down and write a script was not, I mean, it wasn't the most challenging, it wasn't like super challenging, but like you said, there were definitely a few sentences which I wrote out, and then as soon as I started to do that first read, I was like, this sounds either like way too complicated, or that's just not how I would talk whatsoever. So it did require a few on the cuff rewrites of it. But I think the main thing was anything that was too long. I'm sat there thinking, right, how am I going to get through this whole sentence without absolutely mashing my mouth together and not saying any of the words in either the right order, the right syllables, or whatever it ended up being. So
I think as well, that process of scripting in that way is a really interesting exercise in distilling your message.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Thinking about it, I mean, if we'd have scripted this podcast, we'd have been gone 15
Yeah, somebody's
minutes
got to
ago.
listen to 20 minutes of content and absolute drivel to get to the 1 minute of point.
No, this is 20 minutes of insight. So I think that, and you know, it's still that we're still only dipping our toes into this, not because we don't understand what it is that we're doing, but again, like you've said, a lot of it has been like, right, okay, how do we as an agency make time for this? And I'm referring to us as an agency. Actually, that's the same for any business. You know, whether you are, I don't know, a plumber, for example, wanting to promote your business, but you've still got your customers to be out seeing every day, you've still got all your invoicing to do,
Yep.
or if you're a B2C customer, selling like peach hampers, for example, who we had in last week, they're still focusing on product innovation, buying in products to go in the hampers, to then find that time to create content that is going to engage with people. It is really hard, and I think we have to recognise that it can be really hard to find that time to promote yourself.
Yeah. I think you have to be quite strict on yourself, because we do it every time, which is you carve out some time during the month, whatever your plans, your week,
and then something comes
up. Working on yourself or working on the business will always move out of the way when there's money to be made, essentially. So I think that's, for us, I think what's the most important thing is recognising that time spent in the business is not time spent on the business, which is one of the big kind of like things which business owners, leadership people need to recognise. Because yes, you might get an extra task done or an extra job done or an extra product sold this week, but that could have been an extra 100 products in 3 weeks' time because of what you've done today.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
It's just, I think that's just inherently difficult for like humans to just break that pattern and see that kind of like that bigger long-term picture.
I think everybody, understandably, a lot of people are looking for an instant ROI, aren't they? And that's not always the case. It's very rarely the case, let's face it. And you know, a lot of what we talk about can actually be replicated into other areas of our business. And what, you know, a lot of what we talk about refers to lots of different elements, business elements, doesn't it? But it is an investment in your business. It is an investment in the future of your business.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think there is a lot of people buy from people, and video gives people that option to see who they're buying for or who they're working with. So I think that underlines all of that. And then if video is then gonna, if the statistics are correct, if video is gonna be spread wider than a text post, then surely that's got to provide a good return on investment eventually.
You'd hope so. Yeah.
So when are we recording the next one?
No, I think as well, I'm always talking about AI. I'm never going to shut up about AI for now because
you're not.
We've got no opportunity not to at the moment. It's dominating what we're on about. But there is, I think, a really important link with video, and especially video on LinkedIn and within the space that we operate, which is the more that people start to use AI functions for communications on a daily basis, whether this is over email, statuses, all stuff like this, it's so easy for people to present themselves as an expert at anything. When you've got time to prompt an AI, what should I say? Okay, I've got what I need to say, post. You can't fake expertise in this form of content or face-to-face. And I think what is going to happen over the next year or two, as AI gets better and more people adopt it into everything that they're doing, I think people are going to need to take a step back and actually check who they're dealing with. Are they dealing with a person, or are they just dealing with ChatGPT? Because if I'm just dealing with ChatGPT, what am I paying you for? Like, I could just do this prompt myself, right? As a business owner, or outside of this agency, why am I paying you to do marketing when all you're doing is just taking my brief and putting it into ChatGPT? So I do think over the next year or two, I think business owners are going to be looking for authenticity. And I think video is one of those mediums where, yes, you can edit to a certain extent, but I can't sit here and read off a prompt whilst I'm talking to you. I can't read off a prompt. What did that one say? But you get the point. I think it's...
Well, although having said that, there are now apps. There are now apps for prompts on your phone. So that was, I mean, it's not something that we covered yesterday when we were filming your video, but actually you can bring up an app that will have your lines on your phone. So you do still need to be careful there. But I think there is still that massive argument for authenticity. Because again, we do want to know who we're dealing with, because at the end of the day, if we potentially heading into a situation where we're just going to have two AI bots just talking to each other, so nobody's actually involved in that conversation. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the danger is, it's because obviously these language models have just been trained off of a set of data. The output, even though it's unique each time, is still trained off the same stuff. So if you're asking somebody to be creative for you, I think that isn't possible after a certain amount of time with so much AI use. You're still going to get a good enough brief out of it, but it's still going to be the same image or whatever it ends up being, ad, social media post, SEO optimization. It's still going to be the same thing that's now just been output to 100 different businesses. And do you really want the exact same thing, the exact same branding? It's not. I appreciate it's not going to be the exact, but it's going to look similar. It's going to sound similar. Do you want the exact same thing that 100 other people have got, or do you want to have something that somebody has genuinely kind of gone, let's break the mold? Because that's the one thing that the AIs struggle to do, which is create something new. And you're always going to need a human to do that. So,
and
although touch wood, maybe in 3 years' time we're all done for. We'll see.
But again, as a business, I mean, we do use AI on a daily basis, But that's more about business efficiency.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think, I'd like to think that we're nowhere near using AI to sell our business for us or anything like that, because we still want our customers to work with us. And as a business, surely you want to differentiate yourself from your competition rather than just be the same as your competition.
Yeah. And like you said, that's by being a person in front of a camera on short form video, you know.
So if you want more marketing advice, get in touch at www.eyeweb.co.uk.